Jerry?
I knew Shelley wasn't going to be here. That's the only one I knew.
Ellie wasn't going to, or said was?
Shelley's not. Her daughter's graduating in Cincinnati.
Oh, wow. And I know one time it was done without a quorum, and that's usually very not recommended, even if you don't ask questions, because it's deliberation.
Right.
Yeah, we set a bad precedent one time, not under you.
Having quorum for a public hearing.
Yeah, definitely not. Cannot do that. Well, on the plus side, these kids might learn a very interesting lesson about government.
Yeah.
Probably very fast about showing up, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we could have an unofficial Q&A so they can fill out their form.
Mm-hmm.
And not have them convened. And that would kill some time.
With Jeff yesterday, so I assumed he would have told me if he
I have just somewhere too.
Yeah, but with that many children,
Yeah, and
something could have happened 10 minutes ago.
it's May staffing, so who knows who didn't. Yeah.
So for those in the audience, it is 9 a.m., but we need a quorum of 5, so we're waiting for other people. Thank you.
So I said, if we don't have enough to actually have the meeting, we can like come out from behind the dais and just answer some questions from the students before we go.
Quorum, Q-U-O.
Oh, I know, right? Words I didn't know how to spell before my term was up. I just sent him a text.
I've texted him.
I texted Jeff too.
I've been texting with Jeff, I just haven't heard back from him yet.
Right. Did we know for sure that Mike wasn't going to be here?
Right, yeah, that's.
We did know for sure? Okay.
We knew Mike. I knew Mike and Shelley.
Oh, no. Wait, they have that built into iCompass? Oh, that's in the PDF you have. It's like, gosh, if we have iCompass building in, that's not great.
I don't want to.
Could be considered deliberation and long. What are they presenting on the?
Pardon me? But see, we'd have to start the meeting.
Right.
I mean, and we don't. Can't start the
Well, we
meeting
could
before.
actually call, that's what we could ask. our attorney, is if we don't call the actual start to me.
No,
No, not that's what I was asking about.
we're the all in or not?
Jeff says he's on his way and he'll be here in about 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay.
Show will go on.
Jeff's on his way.
I know.
I did, I not heard back.
Yeah, but this is when horse show starts to get busy, so he might usually, yeah. Coffee over here that I hid for myself. Don't worry. Oh, that just reminded me, I gotta email them back. Bay Shore's like, can you come and officially start the race? You wouldn't do that at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's like,
I remember those days. I'm living
oh
on
my God. Well, all the others are there now, so I feel like I probably should go and
I decided
do
to
my part.
turn every part of my world upside down.
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday I had half the house recarpeted.
Mm.
Today I get some new beds.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm closed in 2 weeks. I'm having
This is the first weekend that we've had not traveling for sports. So I'm sleeping. That's the like goal one.
Right.
Yeah.
What
Cool.
moved yourself?
I get a statement done in the spring
My oldest is in dance.
before I can submit my plans and get mine. But, so I thought, well, closed, But hey, so the rest of my
While we're waiting.
You know what I mean?
It's mostly Grand Rapids or
No, I'm good.
Lansing. The three.
Also, even though
Then I needed some siding
Oh, good.
fixed.
sounds like I'd even be annoyed.
Started that in November.
Armor siding came back.
Be nice
Right.
to have a break.
We had the whole front of the house out. And redo just the front.
Are you?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, and I'm doing it all within 4 weeks.
Well, you know,
Chaos.
chaos, but, you know,
Game rooms? Or the game?
going to operate as.
Yeah, did you ever have a
Are you doing something?
Yes,
Good.
actually Sam's.
Well, the whole idea was
Not even
we
that
were
expensive.
Italy.
I've been waiting for it since the pandemic.
Oh,
And
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
bringing like a,
I missed that conversation. That's exciting.
yeah, I think we're all gonna just,
Love that.
yeah, especially.
I love that. Great. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Milestone-ish.
Right.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
just hard to.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. In-state tuition,
But I don't think we have a.
Sorry.
Like,
Ross, I'm eavesdropping. Did you say one of your kids is looking at Middlebury?
they were, but they're not.
Oh, well, that's too bad. My friend just became a professor that is starting this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's Russian studies and studies land use under totalitarianism. So she's joining the Russian studies and
Wow,
East
cool.
Central European program. Yeah.
Harry, we subbed there last year
Oh, yeah, that's
on our
right.
college tour for the kids. Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah.
Super
Well,
small
she's going
town,
from she's going from Arizona State too. That's
Oh,
where
wow.
she's been teaching, so she's very, very excited.
Wow, yeah. Much different climate from
Yes.
Arizona State to.
In many ways.
How's it going? Good. How are you?
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. You're here. You're the hero now.
That's for sure.
I said, you're the hero now.
Me, I'd rather have a shoe addiction.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the May 16th meeting of the Traverse City Downtown Development Authority. I'd like to welcome our students in the audience today. And I'd like to say this is how we not normally run things. Normally, that's fine. Normally, we start at 9 a.m., but that's what happens when you have to build a quorum. You can't start a meeting, a public meeting without a quorum. And so we had a slight delay, and now we're going to be on our way. Liz, can you please help us with roll call?
Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Here. Oh, thank you. We have quorum. So now we are on to the review and approval of agenda. And I have had a request from our executive director for item 9B under new business, which is retail incubator, to move that.
We just do 7A. We'll make the new 7A.
Right, in front of 7A, because the discussion around the retail incubator may have an impact on our budget.
Okay.
So we have that request. So with that amended agenda, do I have a motion?
Are we asking for the whole agenda to be approved?
Yes, please.
Okay. You can go.
I'll move to approve that.
Support.
The motion was made by Mr. Kirkwood, seconded by the mayor. Any comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Those are my students that need at 10.
So now we are at the first of two public comment sessions during our meeting. If anyone wishes to address the DDA board at this time, please step forward. Seeing none, we will move to the consent calendar. So the purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one DDA board motion without discussion. Any member of the DDA board, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the DDA board, and such requests will be automatically respected. If an item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single DDA board action adopting the consent calendar. Item A, consideration of approving the minutes from the April 25th, 2025 DDA regular board meeting. Approval is recommended. Item B, consideration of approving the April 2025 financial reports and distributions for DDA General, Old Town TIF, TIF 97, and the Arts Commission. Approval recommended. So anyone on the DDA board who wishes to remove an item from the consent calendar? Anyone from the public? Do I have a motion from the board to approve the items on the consent calendar?
I move that we approve the consent calendar as presented.
Support.
So the motion to approve the consent calendar was made by Mayor Shamro, supported by Mr. Jobin. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we are on item 7, and as we noted during our amendment to our agenda, we will first discuss the retail incubator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do believe that this memo and potential action does have implications for our budget, so I appreciate us moving it forward. As most of you remember, in 2023, the DDA entered into a contract with IAM Funds LLC on space for retail incubator, and the DDA spent the better part of a year working on the retail incubator, and we had some successes, but ultimately decided, given the potential sunset of TIF 97 and the discussion on their priorities, decided to not pursue that project any further. So staff has been in conversation with representatives from IM Funds LLC about ways that we could essentially get out of that lease agreement. They have a proposal which is in your packet, which essentially is that we would continue to pay rent for June, July, and August, and that would essentially be 2 years of the next fiscal year, and then they
2 months.
2 months, excuse me, 2 months of the next fiscal year, and then they would retain the security deposit, which is essentially 1 month rent. So it has a potential to save us about $45,000 for the next fiscal year. And if you all agree, we could execute that agreement even this afternoon. So
Do you need a motion from us or just consensus from the board?
I think a motion would be great.
I will move, and I totally look to our attorney to correct me on this whenever needed. I will move that we authorize the executive director to work with sorry, I don't have it.
There's a motion in the packet.
Sorry. I don't have it, it's not opening right for me now because something popped up. Okay. That the DDA board approve the DDA executive director and DDA attorney to move forward with a formal agreement with IAM Funds LLC to terminate the lease agreement under the proposed terms proposed by IAM Funds LLC. Thank you for that, sorry.
Most welcome.
My
I have a
iPad
second?
said Fritz.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
I have a little something to say. I mean, I think it's really sad that, it didn't work out. I think it was an interesting, inspiring idea. But seeing as, we're just being honest about the situation, I think I'd rather save the money than keep throwing money at this. So, just bummer, but.
It is a bummer.
Bummer, but it is a business decision.
Absolutely.
So, right,
I think it's the right call at this point.
right.
I agree.
Okay, the motion is to approve the DDA executive director and the DDA attorney to execute this agreement. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Great. I want to thank IAM Funds LLC representatives for their collaboration in this project, so they've been super helpful. The next item on the agenda is the public hearing for the 25-26 DDA budget. So I think, Chairman, you just need to open that public hearing.
Yes, so now we will open the public hearing for the 2025-2026 DDA budget. If anyone wishes to approach the board, please do so. We ask that you would state your name, address, if you have a property or business interest downtown, and to limit your responses to 3 minutes or less. Anyone in the audience wish to speak to the proposed budget? Seeing that there are none, we will close the public hearing, and please proceed, Harry.
So an update from the last time we talked about our budget. We had the essentially study session with the City Commission on May 12th over the budget, and some of the comments that were received prior to that meeting and then also discussed at that meeting are included in your packets beginning on page 18. So we did get some comments about the potential for a new staff position that we have outlined in our budget. We have some comments that were expressed about dedicating additional funding to mitigating the climate crisis and addressing the housing crisis within the city in line with some of the city's priorities. additional conversations about the rehabilitation of the riverbank, which I think are timely because of the grant that we received from NOAA, which I'll talk about in a second. And then I think the other comments were more generalized into the amount of investment this body wishes to make in infrastructure improvements. We've been talking about infrastructure, everything from streets to sidewalks to sewer to stormwater. And so that was expressed as part of this conversation. Go ahead. You have a question?
Sorry, and I admit that this is because I missed my own meeting. By saying my own, I mean the city commission meeting on Monday. We've heard that going to one of the bullet points about mitigating the climate crisis. We've heard that general topic brought up before. We have often asked for specific examples and been referred to meetings where also specific examples of what we're doing right or wrong were not given. Were there any more specific or clarifying comments as part of that comment in the past that we can focus on, or was it again a general blanket statement from the commissioner?
General statement.
Thank you.
However, I will note that from two commissioners, we did sort of have some questions with regards to stormwater management.
Oh, stormwater for sure. Yeah.
Right. So, and that got me to thinking because, stormwater has long been a discussion, right, in this community. I know the city commission had a lot of discussions last year on stormwater, thoughts about creating a stormwater district, all those sort of things. We even had $100K in our budget this year for stormwater management, and I don't believe we have used that. So and also in thinking that this board, I think we've discussed over the past, at least past few meetings, that we feel a sort of responsibility for, at the very least, maybe restoring and improving the river in the downtown area. So I think, to me, at least hit to me that, there may be some things that we could do better in this particular area. I don't have any specific suggestions per se, but it just kind of hits me that it's been a discussion for a long time. And, with all of our upcoming projects, there may be something that we can do that we just haven't thought about yet.
Well,
And
go ahead.
so,
Pete, I've already talked, so.
Well, I mean, we have, among our guiding principles are things like sort of taking action on advancing climate action, sustainability, and, designing a great place for future generations here. And as somebody that's been very much involved in crafting and helping the city to craft this plan for the Lower Boardman and Ottaway River, and someone like all of us who's really dependent on the water here for our lifestyle and for our, just for what makes our community an amazing place. I like the idea of trying to contribute more, as much as the DDA can, responsibly to mitigating things like stormwater runoff and E. coli in the bay and things like that. So to the extent that we have $100,000 in the budget, first of all, I'd like to see that spent. And I'd be enthusiastic about seeing if we can augment that in the extent to which we could.
Yeah, and sorry, the clarifying point I want to make is, and because this budget will be brought up to the city commission for a vote, and last year, as we know, there was some unusual process there that some questions and demands like do more for climate crisis, but not having specific examples, caused our budget to not pass the first vote, and we kind of were down to the wire. This is why I'm pointing out we are, and I think it's good to highlight that. We have already committed money to stormwater. Stormwater has been a conversation for 10 years plus since I was first elected. So we are doing that, and I'm glad we are doing that, and I don't mean to diminish it. We have kind of picked up the mantle over the years that the city and previous DDA boards and previous boards in general have neglected for the entire history of our community, for trying to kind of turn more towards the river and see how we can restore it and how we can fix that. I guess that's my point, though, is that as this conversation continues and as we move forward more, we don't have a climate action plan right now for the citywide. I think that's something that the commission will be looking at, probably potentially doing over the next couple of years, because we have done it for Traverse City Light and Power already. But I brought that point up for a very specific reason, and I'm glad you brought up some of the examples of what we are doing, Ed, because this could very potentially put us in another situation for our budget vote at the city commission level. And I really wanted to clarify that as our team, our staff has been trying to answer this, our staff has been trying to address it. As a board, we're very cognizant of it. That still might not be enough. It still might cause an issue with the votes. Hopefully, it's just one vote, but that is something that we have to be very realistic about when we talk about it, is we're trying to hit a goal that we don't have clarified for us.
The only thing I want to clarify too is, I don't believe the DDA is the lead organization for the
Agreed.
city on stormwater. I mean, and I also believe, I think I've seen in the upcoming budget or plan budget that engineering is actually doing some analysis, more analysis work. I think it's because of some laws that are coming to place and they're trying to meet the requirements of those laws. I just want to make sure that the public knows that, first of all, we take people's comments seriously. And then second of all, that we do understand, I think, the responsibility of the DDA for stormwater management. But it's going to really be a collective effort, I think, from the city, and the DDA will be a part of that.
Yes, thank you.
If I could just add to that and maybe address, Pete, what you raised. Given that we've now made a decision on the retail incubator, that means that essentially the placeholder we had in our current budget, we've just freed up about $41,000 that we were going to allocate to that project. So this body could decide to say, you know what, we already had it budgeted, we're just going to shift it from the retail incubator to stormwater and some variety, and maybe it goes to the assistance with the analysis, or it goes to the Lot B stormwater projects. We could allocate some additional dollars and still be within the budget we had created over the last month and a half. So I'll throw that out as an option.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm not super keen on just saying, we're gonna take incubator money and put it to stormwater, because that feels a little arbitrary, but I think it's fine for us to say, well, we have this money in our budget.
Yeah.
It's a sleight of hand, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
it's just like, it isn't intuitive that incubator money should become stormwater money.
Right.
But if we have the ability to increase our investment in stormwater, bearing in mind that it's fundamentally a city responsibility to deal with
Right.
that, and what we're trying to do is just be good neighbors and act in good faith to try to sort of put money towards the values that underpin the DDA. I think putting 100, 141, 150, or $200,000 towards stormwater management is a great investment in our children's birthright.
So, Harry, with the Lot B project and our proposal to build the farmers market pavilion there, do we know what the cost of the Lot B project is for the city alone?
Yes, so it's estimated at about $1 million. 600,000 of that would be the stormwater, and the rest would be in actually redoing the surface. So it's a fairly large dollar amount for the stormwater component, which we've identified in our budget as another contribution from the DDA. So if we're looking for something that's very direct and has implications for this next fiscal year, the dollars that we just talked about could be included or added on to the dollars that we already have in our budget to make that contribution towards the stormwater at Lot B more significant.
I'm good.
So are we throwing numbers out? Is that what we're doing?
So I guess I would
Talking
suggest
20
from
into
this
last
body,
meeting, so.
and I know it's not a one-for-one swap, but I'm saying, because we are now amending our budget, our proposed budget at $41,000, if we want to reallocate that money towards this stormwater infrastructure project, given that we already have a project that we've identified, and the contribution would essentially be increased, is that something this body is interested in doing? So I'm looking for direction from that. And then we do have just a couple of small amendments we made since our last meeting that I want to just briefly talk about.
So I appreciate your comments, Pete, about it's not really a one-for-one sort of deal. But I also believe that if we're going to be sort of, I'm going to say, we're not going to be co-owners of the lot, but we're going to be really sharing the lot with the city for parking. And given that we're thinking of probably making a $2 million plus investment in the Farmers Market Pavilion, I personally feel it's appropriate to reallocate that money for stormwater, because essentially it's going to be a very much part of the DDA environment, right, that we want people to have in downtown Traverse City.
So are what we're saying is that rather than 100,000 towards stormwater, we should put 141,000? Is that a motion that I would need
You know,
to
I
make?
don't think we need a motion.
No.
I just think if that's the direction we want to go to, ultimately, that's.
Feels good to
yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
The last thing I want to touch upon on the budget is, and we didn't get to it the last meeting, was the general fund, and I really want to call out the grant that we received as a sub-recipient from a NOAA grant for $657,000 plus to do habitat restoration on the lower Boardman Nottoway River. This is something that we had been working with the tribe on for quite some time. So the tribe is actually getting the award. And essentially, it's looking at the river on that 1.6 miles of lower Boardman and determining, what is the actual habitat, what is the landscape, and then how can we essentially design restoration efforts above the water line and below the water line. The really great thing about this project is once we have that identified and we have some of those mitigation measures identified, year 3 of the proposed funding is over $1 million to actually implement those recommendations. So this first phase is what we have in our grant this year, which is very exciting. And this is part of a larger grant with the tribe that they're working on, a large wetlands restoration project north of Northport. And then this is the kind of the other end of it. And the link is the fisheries habitat between the two parcels. That's the linkage. So a great opportunity and excited to get moving on that project. We still have a grant from Eagle on the environmental remediation and demolition of. Did you have a question on that, Amy?
I had a question on the NOAA grant
Yeah,
really
go
quickly. So that is a multi-year grant
Yeah.
from the federal government through NOAA. Does the tribe have that money already basically in hand committed, or is that something?
They have year 1.
Year 1, I was gonna say, but 2 and 3 we're keeping our fingers crossed?
All indications from NOAA is they don't release these grants for a year 1 if they
Right.
don't for sure they have all 3 years. So
Okay.
everyone from NOAA is saying it's good to go, keep moving. But
And I want to clarify for our tribal members that we work very closely with
Yes.
and the good people working at NOAA, that this is a question we're asking at the city commission level too for any of our federal funding.
Right.
If we don't already have it in hand right now, given the current issues with funding being distributed. So I'm probably going to ask that again if we have other ones, and it's no disrespect to anybody who's working on it. I
Absolutely.
appreciate all the work that's gone into it, but it's
Yeah.
a reality that a lot of us are facing right now.
Absolutely.
Question, Harry, on that particular grant, will we be needing sort of the resources of engineering to put that out for RFQ, or is that more under our sort of domain?
No, it's something we would draft an RFP with in concert with NOAA and the tribe to do the technical work, and we would essentially hire that out.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I just want to commend the staff for unearthing that grant and getting that grant. It warms my heart to think that we may be able to do real progress
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
our vision for the Boardman Nottoway.
So that's an exciting grant. The other grants I just want to highlight again are the Eagle grant, which we received actually a year ago. That's still eligible until August of 2026, and that is for the environmental remediation and the potential demolition of the 3 properties on the west end of downtown. You'll see in our budget, we actually had money set aside to do some of the demolition if this grant doesn't come to fruition. Hopefully it will. The trick with this grant, it's all that demolition and environmental remediation, it's contingent upon redevelopment of the site. So it takes a redevelopment to trigger this grant. So we're still eligible for another year and change, but that's in our budget, it's reflected in that. And then our continued work with Rotary Charities on Rotary Square. The other,
Question, Harry.
Yeah.
So on that west side property it's like city parking sort of in the lead now on that? I mean, who is sort of the responsible
so
lead?
the DDA is the holder of the grant.
Right.
But in terms of the direction of how those parcels go, that's at the behest of the city. at
Okay.
this
The
point,
city
yeah.
commission, that is
Yeah.
a vote that the city commission did not, twice now has voted down.
Yeah.
I did hear, though I haven't had a chance to watch the meeting yet, that that issue was brought up at Monday's meeting by one of the previous no votes. So we might be looking at it.
I
moving
just want to
forward in
make
the
clear
future.
that the property is not really DDA responsibility right now. We're relying on the city commission to sort of give us direction on how they want to go.
Correct.
Take action
Yeah,
really,
thank you.
at this point.
The other thing I just want to highlight again in the expenditures under the general fund is we do have a position outlined for communications and special project coordinator. And this is actually a position that's been held in the DDA for quite some time. So essentially, this would get us back up to full staff. If you think about DDA staff, it's been completely flipped in the last 16 months. So getting us back to normal levels is essentially what's outlined in these expenditures. The last thing I want to note is we did add a little bit more money, this is in your memo, to continue with some of our coaching services that we've had for the last year and a half, which I think have been very good for staff, and then potentially an update to the Moving Downtown Forward market study, and then also some board training education for our board, since most of us are new and we're heading into kind of a new frontier. So that's one change from the last time you saw this budget, and the other change is within both TIF budgets, and that's essentially more dollars devoted to the holiday lights. We recently did an RFP, and the inquiries that we've received / some of the initial responses, costs have gone up significantly. So we've increased that slightly just to be cognizant of those potential costs. But we'll see when the full RFPs come in. So those are the only changes from the last time we viewed this budget.
I just wanted to add 2 cents of, I'm really glad that we're investing and talking about investing in the training and coaching for our staff. I know that's something that has been new within the city of Traverse City. DDA and Light and Power started working on that about 2 years ago, and I think often we have neglected staff or staff improvement and really the corporate culture, if you will, of our institutions, because it can be seen as not essential, but I think investing in our staff is essential. So I'm glad to see that continue in our budget.
Great. The last thing I just want to note is just bring your attention back to the timeline on page 18, just so everyone knows what the process is. So on Monday, the City Commission holds the public hearing similar to what we're doing right now on all of the budgets, including ours. And then on June 2nd, the budget is approved by the City Commission. And then at our June 20th meeting, the DDA will officially approve the budget. So 3 more steps, and we're there.
Okay. Thank you.
Old business?
Old business?
Old business.
TIF 97 budget priorities
Right.
with presentation from Progressive on Rotary Square.
So I'm going to invite our team for Progressive to come up, but before, maybe I'll hit the other 2 before we turn it over to Jason, just to give an update on where we are. We continue to have conversations with the team from Beckett and Rader and City Engineering to really closely identify potentially if that collaboration move forward is who would do what and what those costs would be. Based on those conversations, we hope to have a refined cost from Beckett and Rader back here in front of you in June.
Great.
And then exciting to have the first couple meetings with our team from Inform on the Boardman Riverwalk. So that process is moving forward. You'll
Gary,
see.
is that something that we get invited to?
No, these are kind of internal,
Okay.
yeah, just kind of process-oriented meetings. But we did talk about a regular update to this body from that team about progress. So, but just excited to get that on. And then the other news, Rotary Square. Some of you came to our open house yesterday on the conceptual design, and Lauren and Jason are here from Progressive just to talk about what those concepts look like, what we've heard over the last couple months as part of the civic engagement, and what's next. Jason?
I broke the computer, Harry.
You broke it.
It timed out. Does anybody know the password? Sorry.
Oh, it's commission.
Oh, geez, sorry. Thank you. Must not be a capital C.
There you go.
Sorry about that. Good morning, members of the DDA board. Again, I'm Jason Ball, the project manager for our Rotary Square project. Really glad to be with you tonight. Sorry I have not much of a voice because we talked for 3.5 hours straight last night. For those of you that were there, the event was really great. We felt very positively about it. We were blessed with really good weather and the storms held off for us, so that was great. So really quickly this morning, we just want to run through with you kind of a quick recap of the engagement process to date, what we've heard, and then we'll walk through the design concepts that were presented to the community. last night. As of this morning or soon this morning, there's a survey that will go live online that gives everyone the opportunity to provide the same feedback they would have if they could have attended the open house last night. We had about 50, 55 people come through last night, which is great, and the online survey then lets anybody else that wants to give that same feedback provide it. As we walk through these, feel free to stop us if we have any questions. We'll kind of go through this quickly. This is the timeline, again, we showed when we were with you back in January. We're about halfway through our project in terms of tasks, a little more than halfway through in terms of time. And so we're kind of right in the middle where we've heard a lot from the community, we've developed some concepts, and now we're trying to get feedback on are those concepts on the right track or the wrong track. So generally speaking, in terms of engagement activities, these are the things that we've finished. So our first public open house was last night. As we're looking to the future, we have our survey to get feedback, for the same feedback for that open house. We'll then be working with our steering committee to review the feedback we've received and hone in some of the concepts we have now, so to continue to narrow down our funnel. We'll then have another open house where we show those couple of final design options to get feedback. We'll do another survey and then have a sort of final celebration to display the final preferred design and get any last sort of comments or concerns. These are images of our open house last night. Again, it was great. Big thanks to the DDA staff. The reason people showed up is because DDA staff did a great job of promoting the event and getting the word out. So kudos, Lauren and team, for that. Thank you very much. And Harry for getting a great tent set up and managing the event with us. But overall, it was a good event. We felt really positively about the results. With our steering committee, just as a reminder, we've identified 5 project principles that guide this process overall. So these are those 5 principles that we want to be sure we're maintaining enthusiasm and excitement about the project. This is a great thing to celebrate, and so we want to make sure we continue to do that. Being sure that we're always providing options for the kinds of engagement that we do, being sure that we're communicating results in plain language and clearly, avoiding a lot of jargon and design terms, being sure we're trying to encourage lots of representative participation, not just the same folks that show up to all of our meetings, but ensuring we're reaching out, and then making decisions quickly because we are on a tight time frame in terms of budget and the overall process for the DDA TIF. Just as a quick overview for the results we've heard so far, we had about 500 survey responses back in January. The results of those responses are on the screen in front of you. Generally speaking, what we heard is that folks want to have events and things in Rotary Square, but we don't want them to be big, large, noisy events, sort of small, more intimate events, things like smaller live music, small markets. And when those things happen, they want to be sure we're able to connect with family and friends, but we're still really prioritizing sustainability and environmental care. And some of the things we've heard we don't want to see are things like private events, active recreation, and then in the survey we heard sort of a negative response to water features, which we actually heard again last night at our open house. Other things that came out of that survey in terms of unique ideas, connecting to Fish Pass. So we're really going to be honing in on that as we're refining our design concepts. Being sure that Rotary Square is serving as a social, a gathering hub, a place for the community to connect. And then that Rotary Square serves as an everyday, all-year park. So the idea of Rotary Square working for 4 seasons is one of the primary things we continue to hear and is going to be a priority for us as we move forward. Also that it's a place that's generally quiet, that we have different options during the day, and it functions differently depending on what's happening. So we'll really be thinking about how to have a space that both can host sort of small events, but also is a great place to sit and have coffee or lunch with a friend or a colleague in the middle of the day. Yes, Pete?
What do the grayed out numbers with parentheses and stuff mean? Like in identity, 113, 111, 17?
Those are the number of responses that came in, and the number 1 is
I just was
How we
confused because identity has 13, 11, and 7. They're all 1.
Yeah, so it was the how many times people ranked that as their first option. Does that make sense? So I ranked that as the most important thing, and we had 13 people, 11 people, and 7 people that ranked it as their most important option.
Yeah.
And we have detailed results on that survey. If anybody's interested in digging into the numbers, we're happy to share them. They just end up being, 40 pages of detailed survey results. Otherwise, again, related to the survey, we heard interest on a variety of programming options like ice skating and live music. Also that we want to be sure that we're keeping it simple, right? We don't want to over-design the space and have too much there, but have designs that work, are flexible, but don't sort of box us into a particular option any given time, and then again, allow us to be flexible over the course of the year. Lastly, things we heard we don't want to have is private events. We don't want Rotary Square roped off. That came through really loud and clear. There's also concern about things like loud music, given the square's proximity to the river and natural areas, the neighborhood across the river, and also moving away from really active things like playgrounds and splash pads or tourism-based events. Again, Rotary Square being more focused on being a place for Traverse City locals and a place that functions lots of different ways, all seasons, but isn't necessarily focused on big events. So that was our survey results. Next, we held a series of stakeholder meetings that, again, I know many of you attended at the Opera House. So we had a total of 7 stakeholder meetings. The Rotary Charities stakeholder meeting was then later in March, where we connected with key members of the Rotary Charities to get their feedback. As part of those stakeholder meetings, we talked about defining success for Rotary Square. The purple chart's a little hard to see there, but the thing that came out atop everything else, so based on our survey results, we identified some common themes. Those common themes, then we asked our stakeholders about the idea of Rotary Square being an everyday park, like one by far. Other things that stuck out, again, all year activations, place that's lively and active, and then being sure we're leaning into Rotary Square having lots of natural elements to it, not just being, hardscape, brick and concrete space. Other things that came out of that conversation that we continue to hear is what to do with the AT&T lot next door. Our options are limited. That was a really common themes last night. Again, thinking about our connection to Fish Pass, really maintaining flexibility, and then thinking about our realities for events, right? Rotary Square's been used that way today. Because it's all grass, you can see how grass doesn't work great for events sometimes based on the way it looks right now, because we just got out of winter and we're trying to seed it and get it ready for the summer. So thinking through, if we're going to use it for events, what's the right material and things to be there?
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
To clarify about what to do about the AT&T lot?
Yeah.
Because that's put out there. We know that's not our property.
It's not.
So was that question meant to reflect that people kind of were wanting to know what we could do to engage it more, or was the idea that we should engage in AT&T and how to make it more of a better partnering property? Kind of, can you just give a little bit more detail on what that question meant and what people were saying?
Absolutely. So the question is, so what's the deal with the big empty AT&T lot next door? And Harry and DDA staff can speak to this more, but there have been lots of attempts to engage AT&T on options for utilization of that lot or partnering together to make it a space that could be utilized during events. And that's so far been unsuccessful, so that there hasn't been a lot of response from AT&T or any kind of specific information given. It is something that, as we think about design, we're going to be sure that any design we come up with in terms of concepts can incorporate elements of AT&T, so we're not going to build a big wall, right? But it is tricky because we also want to screen that lot a little bit, because right now it's not a pretty thing to look at amidst a square that is supposed to be a really beautiful place to be. So it creates challenges with that lot being there. But so far, we don't have any indications that there's an interest in sort of partnership or collaboration.
Oh, no, definitely. That's been years of not giving responses,
Yeah.
but for many things. But okay, that's interesting. I'll have to take the survey myself, because personally, they have a chain link, I believe, or like a chain on some poles there right now. And so to me, a half garden wall or something almost seems like a better option. So yeah, I appreciate that that's kind of where the conversation went, and clarifying that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So then, based on all that information, we did an event with an exercise with our steering committee where we asked them to pick a persona. So these were sort of the sorts of folks that we envision utilizing Rotary Square. So downtown business owners, employees downtown, people within walking distance, and then people outside of walking distance. And we looked at a bunch of different amenities and options and sort of things that could be included in Rotary Square and asked them, based on your persona, what of these amenities would you really love to see in the square? So this is us in a room down the hall, looking at those different options with our steering committee, and those really bled into then the options that we presented at a series of pop-up events that were held about 6 weeks ago around the city. So based on what we heard from our steering committee, we then presented different amenities and options at pop-up events to get feedback on which of these things do we really like, what should be included in the square. And so this is a result of those pop-up events. What we heard is performances, all-season events, places to sit in the grass, interactive options all came through. So we're seeing a theme here, right? And as part of that work then, so the last thing we did was we had we asked our steering committee to give us an elevator speech. This is Lauren giving her elevator speech at the senior center. What is it that makes Traverse City, right? If you're in an elevator somewhere else and someone asks, why do you live in Traverse City? What are our responses? And these are some of those things that came out of our steering committee conversation. And so as a consequence of all of that, the overall design theme that we've sort of developed for Rotary Square that's driving the concepts is that we want the square to promote connections in the community while we're also really celebrating Traverse City's natural environment. So that's sort of the guiding principle for the work that we're doing. And then we've developed we've prioritized design elements within the design options that Lauren's going to walk through with you. So some things that we know we have to have, right? Rotary Square has to be primarily for residents. It has to be activated year-round. We need natural elements. It has to have great public space for seating. It has to connect to the Fish Pass. We've got to consider that ATT parking lot, basically non-negotiables for our design options. And then we have some things that are maybes, depending on the solution, right? So interactive or engaging art, small concessions, water features or fire pits, ice skating rink, things that are optional. The only thing we've kind of ruled out at this point is Rotary Square having a permanent restroom located on it. That's for several different reasons, and this question came up several times last night with the community as well. Primarily because what we've heard throughout is we want Rotary Square to remain flexible. If we put a permanent restroom building in, we lock ourselves into a certain design that really reduces flexibility. Fish Pass is going to include restrooms limited that are available during business hours, so that's partially a help, but there are pretty limited restroom options. So right now we're thinking about options for the DDA to continue its program to partner with nearby businesses to make their restrooms public, as well as temporary restrooms if there are large events. But at this point in time, that's the only thing that we've really sort of ruled out of design options. So with that, any questions about the process, the engagement work, kind of where we've been, what we've done so far?
Well, I guess I would just say that we were looking at the options. It sounded like from your presentation just now that water features should actually maybe be moved to the no-goes.
Maybe. It depends. Based on last night, and we'll see what happens on the survey and follow up with the community. But so far, some of those things that are optional, and this is, again, why we're doing this check with the community, right, is what fits and what doesn't. Generally speaking, we're not getting a ton of positive feedback on water features and fire pit, but that's based on 53 people last night. We'll see what that looks like.
Sorry, that was my mistake. That was just last night. So I thought you were saying that was in the surveys too.
No, sorry. Yep, that's last night. So now the survey will go live today, and we'll find out more over the next couple of weeks.
Great.
All right.
So I'm going to walk you through what I think is the most fun part, which is the design options. So the way we presented this is really the first time we put pen to paper where the community is seeing actual designs of what Rotary Square is going to be. So we intentionally set it up in these three buckets, these three options. And the reason we did that was to test a lot of different feedback that Jason just went through. So is this more plaza where it's more flexible, larger, it supports different type of events, or is it on the other side of the scale, which is more park-like, a lot more plants, a lot more nature and grass seating, and maybe changes up what type of events or sizes of events that are going to be there. So, so you'll see design options kind of framed in these three conversations, and that's a lot of the feedback we asked for yesterday was what feels right for Rotary Square. And then we also asked them for feedback on specific design options like water features, fire pits, items like that. So this is a really quick overview. I'm about to kind of quickly go through each one of these with a little bit more detail. So the first one being more plaza. You will see the alley in a lot of these is tested out a different way. This is, exploring different ways to connect to Fish Pass. So in this one specifically, we're calling it a Fish Pass Outlook. It will take away a few of those parking spaces, but it has seating. It kind of pulls people over across and invites them to look into Fish Pass. You'll see this option kind of going with the plaza. It is a lot more open in the middle. It has a lot more flexibility from that perspective. And the ground plane is something that's, we'll say, just hardscape right now. We'll, that's not detail we're in today, but that is detail we'll kind of look at going forward. And then the what to do with AT&T parking. So this one explores what we're calling a respite garden. So the plantings kind of hug around these seating areas, make a really intimate spot. You'll see this tested out a little bit differently. This one also looks at, so these are precedent images, like what could these design elements be? This doesn't have to be the final look, but shade structure, swing sets was really popular in that steering committee exercise that Jason was showing pictures of. So really activating that the sidewalk experience for something that's going to engage people and bring them in and have them something to do, and then it kind of opens up behind that. The second option for Plaza pulls in more kind of curve features, so it's not as much as 90 degrees. This one we tested out something called an art panel. I'll show you an image in a second. So this is how we are thinking about the AT&T parking lot. Like, is there an opportunity for art to really be the background of this space? And then the alley tests out something called seasonal structures. Again, the plaza, we're thinking more event-oriented. Is there something that stays there to help with tickets, drinks, things like that? And we got really wonderful feedback yesterday on people's preference for or against that. And then some of the design features. So Open Plaza will have a bit more of the movable furniture where some of the options may not. And then looking at how the hardscape features, so the types of materials and colors can help break up that space. And then the art panel in the upper corner, again, this can, be changed and really celebrate some of those design themes Jason had mentioned before, really thinking about the natural environment. So in the middle, not quite plaza, not quite park, we have two options. So these ones pull in a bit more of like a grassy area, but still thinking about, is there an event with tents or is there a stage where people gather? So still trying to maintain flexibility from that perspective, but make it really inviting for this everyday park, which we've heard is super important. So this one tests out a stage in the upper page right, looking back and having that open lawn there for gathering. And then some of the design features are more planting types and seating kind of embedded along the edge. This thing called the bosque of trees, which are these skinny, tall trees that add shading, but also just a really nice gathering, intimate place to hang out with family or friends. And then the stage in this option, we show it as covered. You'll see another option tests out a different approach to the stage. So very similar to one of the first plaza ones, but trying to find that balance. So again, adding more open lawn. This one tests an open stage near Fish Pass. So a big question that came up in reviewing these with the steering committee previous to the open house was, what's our backdrop? Is Fish Pass where people are seen when we're at events and that's our focal point? Or is it downtown flipped on the other side? So these tests out. We got some great feedback yesterday about people's preference. This one does test out a little concession if there's food and beverage for people to be there, and a different type of water feature. So a few examples of what that can look like. And this one has a small open stage with no kind of coverage above, which we got wonderful feedback on. Okay, so on the other side, the more park-like, a lot more trees, a lot more vegetation, and trying to bring in some organic shape. So this one uses berm, so just lifting or curves, kind of bringing the topo up. Along AT&T, that's also really, this one kind of, maybe more than others, pulls in these natural elements as play for kids, but also adults, I think, could maybe, have some fun on these. So thinking about people being able to climb to really engage with nature, logs, boulders, things like that, and also pulling in native plants on this one. It does still provide smaller open space, so we aren't saying events can't happen, it's just a different type or flexibility than the plaza side. A few examples of that, so it leans a lot more into the natural elements, and then this gateway identity element is here. But really about a feature that's really prominent and a focal point. So this one tests out that, I didn't point it out, but it's more up at the other corner, so the front door being at State and Union. And then the last option is this more radial, so still keeping curves. A lot of trees. It pulls the plaza over to Union Street. So that's where, if there's events or tents set up, it would be along that side with the shade structure above it. And this one tests out a fire pit up at Union and State as like the focal point to kind of bring people as they're walking from downtown and across the old town. As a place to also hang out and starting to test out fixed elements that could be all season, not just programming that invites people to be there, but trying to test out what makes sense from the community's perspective of something that they'd want to see. So I went through those quickly, but here's again the overviews. I think questions, any quick questions? Yeah.
Just a comment, I was there last
Yeah.
night, and one thing I did not catch was on some of the designs,
Yeah.
a seasonal stage. And so one thing that just comes to my mind when you talk about that is which seasons, how do you maintain it, how do you move it, what does it look like after a couple of years after you're moving it? So that's hopefully something I would think that would be considered in the design process.
Yep, so as we move forward and narrow this down, we'll get a lot more into how does each design support each season, and really what are the operational and maintenance portions to keep it going, what does that look like? So that'll be, as we move forward, definitely thought through and shown with the community and to you guys.
And I'm sure it's been discussed, but I think it'd be just in public to know that anything with a fire pit would not involve natural gas.
Right.
Right.
Yep, we've heard that comment, thank you.
Right, thanks.
There's always exceptions to the rules.
So just to again summarize kind of where we sit in our overall process, right, and a reminder, Rotary Square is sort of pre-design work, right? So we're doing a lot of community engagement. We're moving through what we call schematic design, which is, think of site plan at planning commission. So we'll get to the point where we have a design and we'll generally know where features are going to be and how it's going to function. But then going into the detailed design, where does each screw go to hold in an element is the next phase in the process once we have a really good budget estimate and clarity around that. So just a reminder, as you all are very aware, as DDA members that are in the business of doing physical infrastructure work, there's a lot still to come for Rotary Square. But depending on our results, it's also a project that may be able to happen pretty quickly if funding is available. And so as we get into that exact concept, we'll know more about what level of effort's required, how long construction's going to take, those kinds of things now that we're moving into getting beyond lots of concepts into just a couple. Lastly, that design concept survey is live now. So if you weren't there last night as a DDA member, you can scan that QR code and take it. It should be up on the DDA's website later today. We had members of the press there with us last night that were excited to share that link when they publish information about the event, I think tomorrow morning, right? So we're eager to get that information out to the community, hear feedback broadly, and continue to move forward with the process.
Cool.
So happy to answer
Questions,
any other questions. Yeah.
We talked about the press pushing it out, so I guess this is a pre of Sarah's potential presentation later. Are we going to be doing some pretty regular pushing of it on our social medias and stories?
Absolutely,
and
yep.
Great. Always like to share that.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great work.
Yeah, exciting.
Okay, we'll go into some more boring things now. We'll talk about old policy and streetscaping policy. Sorry, old business, streetscaping policy.
So the streetscaping policy, this is an item we've been discussing for the last 2 meetings based on a recent approval of snow melt and streetscaping reimbursements for a downtown property owner, looking at a policy was quite dated and looking at essentially refreshing that policy. And at our last meeting, we talked about some of those elements, and it was discussed about bringing essentially back a clean version of the final policy, which you see in your packet. Essentially, the things that have been added to this policy are the adherence and identification of the building electrification policy set by the city, essentially not reimbursing, there should be pre-engineering costs and management, and then a couple of items that we've removed, the streetscaping improvements that are less than 20 years old are not eligible. I think given the state of infrastructure, we want to look at all infrastructure in terms of age and use. And then the involvement of snow melt systems that will be limited to those that at least complete one face block. I can tell you that most of the requests that we receive are kind of single parcels. We had a conversation with the homeowners association just last week about that as well. So that's removed in here. So this is the draft policy if you choose to take action on it, or we can continue to discuss it and bring it back, but it's at your discretion.
And this is
Any
the
questions?
same, this is the same, essentially the same policy that we talked about at length in finance, right?
Yep.
The only thing I'm thinking when I'm reading through it is, do we have any policy with regards to timing of reimbursements?
Right.
So, for example, I mean, we budget for streetscaping based on what we think is going to be coming up in the next year. But could potentially someone come back, someone could come back maybe a year later and say, we would like to have this reimbursed, but we don't have it in the budget.
Yeah.
Just, have we had any, do you know if we've had any sort of thing like that in the past?
We haven't.
Okay.
Yeah. And not saying they couldn't. I mean, I think in the past, we've allocated so many dollars each fiscal year that never came back. Like the money never ran out for that particular line item. Given the current pace at which we're seeing reimbursements, I don't know if even with the lower amount that we've allocated this year, we're going to exceed that. I mean, that's something we could consider, certainly. And whether that's spelled out in the policy or not is something that we would make as a fiscal decision each year or on a case-by-case basis.
Can I ask, and I'm of two minds on this, so this is why I'm asking, is the removal of the involvement in snow melt systems be limited to those that complete at least one face block? I know that snow removal is a very expensive system to put in, and, some of this has to do with, keep wanting to say investment and development at the same time. Maybe potential development where there's going to be some things opened up there and only doing part of it makes sense. But I also know that in the city, if we have special, or citywide policy, if we have special improvement district requests, essentially, that people want something paved or something along those lines, it has to be, 50+1 to get it done. And so I am a little torn on this because having random bits of snow melt isn't great because that doesn't give us our cohesive mobility throughout the city. One building's front versus an entire block, that doesn't help somebody who has mobility issues, which is the real important part of snow melt to me.
Right.
So did the finance committee or anybody else really kind of delve into the thought behind that? Because it's still a tough one for me, I'll be honest.
I think this is the biggest conundrum of this policy, right? I think ideally you'd want to see a block-by-block approach to this, if not a district-wide approach to this. And I think this has come up in our discussions the last couple of months, is especially if TIF is extended, could we take a broader approach to this and be more strategic? I think what's been born out of just experience is that that's not the case.
Right.
We've had a couple of experiences where the entire block front was snow melt, but the boiler's in one building, right? And that building, the boiler didn't work, and then that building owner sold it, and so now the whole block is impacted. So there is kind of a piecemeal approach. There's a kind of a holistic block-by-block approach. I don't know if there is a right answer, which is kind of why we settled it the way it is, just because every request we get nowadays is kind of parcel by parcel.
Mayor, I appreciate your thought there. I guess my thought is if we had some sort of, I'll call it technical vision of how we would approach streetscape, snow melt on a block-by-block basis, then I think that'd be something for us to ponder with this policy. But given what I think history and the fact that we don't have sort of even a proposal in place of how we do it block by block, it just seems to me this is a very practical means of implementation that, quite frankly, could always be changed later if we got to that
right,
point.
it doesn't preclude us to actually making the attempt to do it
Right,
block-wide.
right.
But yeah.
So that's where I think that, again, like I said, I'm of two minds on this, so I hear both sides here. But, you know, I almost would be more comfortable if it was, the policy was requiring that the developer or whomever, I'm assuming it's a developer, the average person probably isn't gonna have the money for snow melt systems in their home budget, be required to, you know, put out, I forget what we call them, but like the request for the special improvement district, something along those lines to at least gauge interest, because I also do know that was much as well-intentioned as things can be, it's a big difference between saying, you know, we'd love to see it on the whole block, and we're requiring you to at least make an attempt to get the whole block on board while you're doing this, while we're tearing things up, while things are under construction. Because I do think that we have to look at that bigger picture. And it is a bit of a chicken or the egg scenario, where we know that in the past, we haven't been able to, or we've done it here and there in one boiler, and that can be a problem. But we're also saying that if we want, you know, if TIF gets extended, this could be something that we use our money on. But we also kind of haven't said that very clearly. And we're trying to make, you know, in theory, we're making an argument of why people should extend TIF. But now we're saying, well, we kind of have this piecemeal thing that it will get us some snow melt, and that'll work too. But maybe we could get this. I think sometimes we have to make it a little bit more black and white of the way to get snow melt is to do it by the block or to have the downtown or the city pay for it. And that's very clear to people then. That's where people know what the process is. But, you know, again, I'm playing the Gary, I always call it the Gary Howe. When he was a commissioner, he'd say, I'm talking so I can think while I'm talking.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at with this right now, because I do want to see more snow melt. It is a huge factor in mobility for people who have trouble getting around. I just don't like that we're building into this policy kind of this piecemeal approach and hoping that eventually it creates a interconnected network and not just patchwork. And that's my big concern with this one is, you know, so that's why, I don't know, I'm almost leaning towards some kind of requirement that they're at least attempting to get the rest of a block in. And I'm thinking about, you know, there's going to be construction at the corner of Pine and Front. There's development going in right there. You know, was Gordy Fraser even approached about doing the rest of that block? That's 2 buildings that you'd be talking about there. What would that look like? And I'm not putting that on Gordy Fraser or on Sox for their development. It's just one that's in my mind right now. That seems like that would be a low-hanging fruit if we had this in our policy. And, you know, at least we have on record that the other building said no, or the other buildings, depending on the block. And so that's just where I'm struggling with this one right now, if I'm going to be honest. And you might not, I think this is a 4 vote. You probably don't even need me. But eventually these things do come to the city commission. And I'm also trying to think of where the city commission might come from on these. You know, 1 boiler for a block. Are we now talking about 1 boiler per section of a block? And so in theory, we'd be dealing with 4 or 5 different ones in a completed network one day. Is that a better approach? And if it is, let's have a good reason to explain for it.
I think some of the complicating factors, Mayor, is that this is the financial incentive, right? So a developer could put in the snow melt and say, I don't want your 50%. I just want it for my building, and I'm not gonna, unless there's a policy at the city level that says, from the engineering department or whomever, saying no, you have to do that. So it's like there's a building policy and then there's the reimbursement policy, and they do mesh together, but that's where this layer gets a little bit wonky.
I thought because that city right away, though, they would have to have city approval to put something like that in if they were paying on their own.
Right, but this is a DDA policy and reimbursement.
Right,
That's the
that's what I mean.
difference, right? So unless the city has a policy that says if you're putting in snow melt, you have to ask all your neighbors.
Right.
Then I don't know if they mesh together. So that's where it gets a little wonky. There's no easy answers up for this one.
Yeah.
And I think this come up with this policy is, with the city's electrification policy, is it isn't really clear to me, and maybe you know this, Harry, if someone has an existing, just say, natural gas boiler, and they decide through some sort of improvement activity that they want to put snow melt on their sidewalk, does that conflict with the policy? Do you know?
I mean, I think it does from a technical standpoint. How things are grandfathered in, I think, is a question of process that hasn't been tested, to be honest with you.
And the process, and the policy, and again, that doesn't mean that the commission wouldn't vote to say electric or nothing. The policy was brought forward for vote, I think, 3 times. before it was finally passed. The reason why it was passed was because before there was no way for somebody to get an exception for situations like that or for mitigating circumstances. And it was finally passed when there was a line added that there could be basically a chance to appeal or to be grandfathered in on certain things if there were no options for electric, or potentially are we redoing a bunch of infrastructure that could be damaging too. So I'm not saying that means that in your scenario somebody would inherently be granted it, but there would be a path for them to kind of appeal the policy and make their argument.
So are we saying that the boiler then has to be run off electric?
If it's new, it would.
If it's new, yes.
Yes.
This whole policy seems to me very oxymoronic or something, internally contradictory, because on the one hand, we're trying to remove obstacles to people getting reimbursed for installing stone melt by doing things like saying it doesn't have to be a whole face block and it could be newer than 20 years old. On the other hand, we're reaffirming this policy, which I'm not opposed to, but I'm just pointing out that has to be electrified, which I don't know a lot about it, but what I have, sort of my impression is that electric snow melt is prohibitively expensive. So isn't this just moot? It seems to me like there isn't going to be any snow melt going in that gets reimbursed because people aren't going to, if they're either going to just do their own building or they're with a gas boiler or whatever, or they're just not going to. I just feel like we're spinning our wheels a little bit. So my feeling about this is not ripe. We do not have a policy. I don't think there's a thing we can do that's going to have a real world impact.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong, but tell me if I'm wrong.
So if we don't have a policy of whatever degree we determine, we're still going to get asked for reimbursement out of just years of how it's worked. So
Well, in that case, for me, I'd rather, just because we can't do a whole block, for me, just because you can't do everything doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. So my feeling is, yeah, let's remove barriers. Let's make it easier for people. Maybe someone does have the economics to do an electric snow melt. So I guess then I would say, yeah, remove the newer, the 20-year-old thing. Remove the entire face block thing and see what happens.
There are different types of electric snow melt. So there are some that are, as you say, probably cost prohibitive in our environment, and there's some that may not be.
Great. Well,
Right.
then they can go ahead and
Right.
do them.
Right.
I would say make it as easy as possible, even if it's a patchwork. It doesn't solve mobility problems, but it helps. Maybe that's the store you want to go to,
Right.
and you can find a parking spot nearby.
I'd say thanks for the work, but for now, let's just table it.
I mean, I would be happy with removing the full face block and the 20-year requirement.
I'm not too keen on the electric part, because I just put a new boiler in my building downtown.
The electric part's existing, though. That's
I know,
already
but-
in it.
But I mean, essentially, I just put in a whole new gas boiler
Yeah.
for a big building, and
I
I
understand.
mean, I could essentially run my snow melt off that same boiler. So, but let's table it for now. That's what I'm gonna say.
Well, we don't have a motion yet, so.
Yeah, we have no motion on the floor, so if there's no motion, we'll move on. I guess the one thing that I would want to point out is we do have snow melt in our budget for next year.
Right.
So if we don't have a policy, then to me, it's sort of a quandary of if a reimbursement request comes, what happens?
Right. I'd be fine. I think I'm to the kind of idea of like the piecemeal is what we're probably gonna have to deal with. If we wanted to bring this back when we had a fuller version of our board here, like because we haven't voted it down, that might make sure that we have all the voices in the room and have a real robust idea of where everybody lands. I'm not against continuing this conversation, and I don't want the staff to feel like, at least in my opinion, that we're punting this and saying, bring it back to us in December or something. Like, I don't think we're trying to do that. I think, I'd like to just hear from more of our board members to get more of a lay of the land.
Okay. I also want to point out the
I know,
say
it's
it.
like an
electrification policy that is, is a city policy, and so whether, we don't really have a choice on whether to follow that or not. If there are any exceptions granted, it would have to be at a level above us, so. Okay, we'll move on to the ambassador program.
So this is an item we've been discussing for quite some time and excited to potentially move forward. As you know, we've been working with a third party to do what we kind of call our clean and green efforts through the summer. After some discussion over the last couple months with Seeds, we have a proposal in front of us in support of their EcoCorp team to provide those services. And they're laid out in terms of what the goals of this program would be, and then some of the actual surfaces and metrics that we use to do this. If we approve this today, we actually will get started on Monday. So this team is ready to go. And what's great about this is we have at least a 2-person crew during the day plus a supervisor. So that's up to 3 people for the summer. We have it starting next week and then working through September. And that September is a little bit flexible based on kind of how we are with the season and how we are in terms of the amount of people downtown. So we have a not to exceed cost listed in here, excited to get this moving underway. If you walk downtown, I can tell you already, we need it to start Monday, so we're ready to go. Yeah.
Questions?
I just had a quick question that this is, so this is things like planting flowers, doing some of the beautification stuff. During busier periods and, I'm just thinking about like when we have Cherry Festival and Cherry Festival pays for the additional garbage and recycling things to be put out and everything. Will this team be helping with that, or are we going to ask them to kind of take a step back because that area kind of gets handed over basically during that period?
Absolutely. Yep. And then a lot of these services, there's a kind of a benchmark level that's provided by city staff. So this is a supplemental, an add-on, just to take it from kind of basic service to the next level. Certainly when there's other events put on by other entities within the community, they are charged with doing their own maintenance. And so we would complement those efforts, but anything directed by those entities would be their responsibility.
Great. Well, I've been speaking at some high schools, and I know that keeping downtown clean during busy times is very much something everybody's been bringing up in different hours. So glad to see that we can help with that, at least on our part of it.
Yep. And just a clarification on the budget, the $72K, a portion of that is charged to this year, and a portion will be charged to next year? Is that
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So,
You need a motion?
please.
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that the DDA board enter into a contract with Seeds for a not-to-exceed cost of $72,000 to clean and green services on from May 19th through September 26th, using TIF 97 Old Town TIF funding, subject to approval as it is from the DDA Executive Director and Attorney.
Support.
Any questions? So motion by Todd, supported by the mayor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Great.
I'd just like to,
It's a great idea. I mean, thank you so much for,
Yes.
We've talked about it
Yes.
forever, and it's perfect.
right, thank you so much.
I'd just like to thank Harry and staff, because I know it was a lot of work to kind of find, the right team to do this. So, thanks, guys.
Executive Director Report.
So the thing I just want to highlight is Hannah Park Overlook should be done today. Actually, when I drove in, they were putting the railing on.
We're still working.
They're putting the railing on as we speak, so hopefully that project is done today. The last element are the benches. Parks and Recreation has purchased those benches, and that'll be the last piece. But essentially, all the in-ground infrastructure will be done today, which is great. The city is still working on the TIF implementation policy. I expect that to come back at their June 2nd meeting. And as I mentioned before, some of the things we're looking at for the holiday lights, anticipating those costs to be a little bit more than we anticipated. We had some good news on the general infrastructure repair. We did our walking tour with city staff. City engineering actually, about a day ago, put together a bid proposal. That bid proposal would be released in June. Based on what we receive, we would kind of a la carte how much we have earmarked for that and then spend on those infrastructure improvements. Given the timeline of bid proposal when they actually do it, it probably wouldn't get closed out until the fall, but at least we're making strides. So that's underway. The last thing I'll mention is on Monday, we have our planting day. We have over 60 planters that we put throughout downtown. We're always looking for volunteers. If you have a green thumb and you want to use it, 8:30 at the marina, we'll start planting. So,
Thank you. Director of Events and Engagement, Sarah.
Good day, everyone. Thanks for coming to my events talk. We're kicking it off with Live After 5. It begins tonight at Horizon Books and the J. Smith Walkway. This is essentially an event series featuring local musicians to create a sidewalk soundtrack. So as you're living, dining, playing, shopping, it's creating a little vibe for you, putting some pep in your step. We've got 2 performers tonight. Posh Nosh is going to get some butt wiggles going with their world music. And then Ben Ritchie, you might have seen him perform locally. He's going to be smashing it on his acoustic guitar. And then we will go through the first Friday of June, June 6th. And thanks again to MSU, FCU, and Loom for sponsoring this series. We know it's really important to keep that downtown culture vibrant and fresh. Toast to Downtown, I don't have a lot of updates on this, but if you have not yet RSVP'd, please do so by the 28th to keep your low pricing. And to help us with our numbers, please do that. There is a misprint on my memo. It's actually 65 at the door, so even bigger savings. We do still need some volunteers. I'm turning to the public. I'm slowly getting some slots filled, but we need some help with the Slider and Cocktail Showdown, as well as debris directors, cleanup captains, garbage gurus, whatever you want to call yourself. We need help taking out the trash. The Art Fair series is in full swing. We are finalizing invoices this week, so we can touch base with our waitlist folks for Old Town and National Cherry Fest next week. These events are getting more and more popular. I say that this is my second time, so
219.
even more popular. The Downtown Art Fair, we sent invoices out, so we're just waiting, or we will be sending invoices out, so we're just waiting for those to get paid for that wait list. And then Crooked Tree Arts is helping us discover who we can work with for our collaborative community mural. I do have a building. I'm not going to announce where yet, but I think we've secured one on Front Street to hang this community art piece.
Nice.
Street sale and Friday Night Live updates. Friday Night Live application is live right now for entertainers, food and beverage vendors, and nonprofits. We're getting quite a few people applying. We're going to have some fun new activities, according to the applications at least. June 1st is the deadline for that. And then the street sale application will go live sometime next month in June with an early July deadline. Again, you must be a member to participate in this event. Any questions?
Great job.
Okay,
right,
thank
thanks
you.
all.
Looking forward to it. So for receive and file, we have the Traverse Connect Q1 growth barometer. I'll let that be nighttime reading for us. Public comment. We have a final public comment section. Anyone wish to speak? If so, please state your name, address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Good morning, Richard Robbins. My address is 720 Center Place, a resident of Traverse City, but also I'm here on behalf of the Grand Traverse Safe Streets Alliance. As part of our efforts, we have implemented a robust website. This is part of the discussion, so be mindful here, is that if you want to go to gtsafestreets.org, I would encourage all of you to sign up for updates, take a look at what we're showing. It's pretty robust. As part of this introduction and launch a month ago, we have hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of Traverse City residents, families, households that want to be engaged in non-motorized transportation in the city. advancing it, designing it, helping, encouraging, supporting it. And so one of the challenges we have is that they say in the comment section is that they do not feel safe entering downtown by walking, running, or cycling. It's a big issue, and it's come up many times in the comment section. So what we're looking forward to is working with the DDA and the organization in figuring out ways to be able to make it safer and have a more inclusive approach to getting to downtown. One of the challenges I think we have is the auto-centric approach we have in our overall culture in the United States, and that's an issue we have to address. The DDA is very interested in the ability to be able to support the local businesses, and that's not necessarily always having parking spots. Really, the objective is butts in the door. That's really the objective. I've had an opportunity now to work with the DDA director in Holland, Michigan, as well as in Ann Arbor, and they have implemented very robust approaches for non-motorized access into their downtown areas, and they attribute that to the actual merchants to increased retail sales for their districts. So I think there's precedent. I think the opportunity is right. I'm a little concerned. I see line items of $5,000 for Old Town TIF for non-motorized and $15,000 in these budgets, but yet we kind of talk about $41,000 kind of moving that in, on the spot, for stormwater retention over. So that's one of my concerns. So anyway, thank you so much. We're looking forward to working with the DDA.
Thank you, Richard. Any other comments? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
God, do you have 2 seconds since I keep forgetting to text you back?